Kofi Kingston is in a career resurgence. That's not to say his run with the New Day has been bad, but recently he's gone from comedy dude to being featured in conversations about who should win the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 35. That's quite the shift. Kofi has been a constant in WWE for well over a decade though, and has always shown how talented he is. Take the Royal Rumble for example, and all the nonsense he's done during that event. One would have been fine, but Kingston pushed himself to try and be inventive each and every time. Because he has been grinding away for so long, however, there's plenty of things in hindsight WWE would rather you remove from your brain, as long as that's alright. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 things WWE wants you to forget about Kofi Kingston. Number 10 is middle name. This one is just weird today, given that WWE loves nothing more than reducing people's names down as much as possible. It's amazing Kingston isn't just known as Kof, but way back when he actually had a third name which slotted right there in the middle. When he debuted on the ECW brand all those years ago, he was called Kofi Nahaje Kingston. Why WWE did this we don't know, especially as the roots of that name are West African as opposed to Caribbean, which is where the gimmick was from. But that was the decision that was made back in 2006 and 2007. Kofi was gonna have 3 names, and screw you if you didn't agree. The real clash was that this addition did work with the real life Kofi, but not the character WWE wanted him to play. So maybe it was Kingston that got it in as an homage to his own roots. Either way, this was real, and let's forget it, even though no one actually remembers it anyway. Number 9, No Way Out 2009 Disappointment. Only coming out recently when Kofi guested on the Edge and Christian podcast, it turned out that No Way Out 2009 was a serious point of sadness for Kingston as he was gearing up to be in the Elimination Chamber match. Told a month in advance he was going to be involved and challenging Chris Jericho, John Cena, Rey Mysterio, Kane and Mike Knox for the WWE World Heavyweight title, he spent weeks coming up with cool stuff he could do inside the structure. And then it was stolen away from him. When he arrived at the building that night, he was informed that plans had changed and that a pre-match attack courtesy of Edge would take him out of proceedings and he'd just be wheeled to the back and probably watch the rest of it on TV. And really, this all comes down to the year it happened. Back in 2009, Kingston wasn't the hero he is today and was clearly seen as expendable. It absolutely sucks, but also brings a bit of poetry into what's going on right now. Feels like justice. Number 8, his tag team success with CM Punk. You rarely hear WWE mention this, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. CM Punk is persona non grata nowadays, and none of his successes are promoted for obvious reasons. That is a shame when it comes to Kofi though. Even now when you go through photo galleries on WWE.com, you can see Kingston celebrating tag team gold alongside Evan Bourne and other superstars, but Punk is nowhere to be seen. It may as well never have happened. It was real, however, and went down in late 2008 for 47 days. They beat Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes for the belts in October before losing them in December at a random house show to The Miz and John Morrison. There's always been strong hints that Punk and Kofi are good friends outside of the industry, so let's just focus on that instead. I'm going to imagine the straight edge savior is overwhelmed for his buddy, because that just makes this whole story even more pleasant. Number 7, his single belt title runs. Not really his fault, and more how WWE treated their single titles in the past. Most of Kingston's runs with the likes of the Intercontinental or the US Championship have pretty much been forgettable, which is handy for this list. Kofi did all he could to make it work, but like a lot of other wrestlers, you were fighting an uphill battle when you got given one of these belts, which is why his 4 IC and 3 US reigns were rather lackluster. It did equate to 266 days as Intercontinental Champ and 209 as United States Champ, but the fact we're focusing on these stats as opposed to epic feuds sums up what was happening. Again, this was just the lay of the land where titles such as this were thrown around for fun. The good news being, if Kofi gets another once his world title fun has ended, there's every chance today it actually works. Of course, the dream is still to see him winning the big one at the Showcase of the Immortals, but let's hedge our bets all the same. Number 6, it wasn't the plan. Whether this is good or not depends on your perspective, but yes, what's happened to Kofi Kingston since January 2019 was not the plan. Everything we've seen from the Gauntlet match to the Elimination Chamber was penciled in for Mustafa Ali, but when he got injured, a substitute had to be made. The nod went to Kofi, who has smashed it ever since. Now, on the one hand, this has been rubbish for Ali, but I doubt Kingston has minded all that much. You've got to take the opportunities that are presented to you, and he couldn't have done any more with this. The landscape has utterly changed because of his performances and stock with the WWE fan base, and now we've arrived at some crazy place no one expected at the turn of the year. With all that said, no, this was not the direction for Kofi, who before all this was kind of lost with the New Day, who are looking for a program of their own. How this affects all that going forward, we shall have to to wait and see, but it's all been very cool and a reminder that you never know what could happen. You can double that statement if Kingston does become WWE champ as well, because my word, what a sight that will be. Number 5, Big Show dissed him. When the New Day first came together, the Big Show had some choice words for Kofi Kingston, namely that running around with these two idiots isn't going to help you get over. A lovely positive sentiment from the man known as Paul White. Clearly the Giant didn't think much of this new stable and he wasn't going to be silent about it. He wasn't going to be subtle about it either. As he admitted on Stone Cold's podcast, Big Show took Kingston to one side to discuss this and made sure Xavier Woods and Big E were in earshot. Not sure about you, but that just sounds really, really mean. And pointless, and a little bit immature. Kofi spurned such criticisms and Big Show has since admitted he was wrong about this, but still, I can't see WWE wanting to promote this in any sense, which is why they haven't. It was first revealed on a non-affiliated podcast and kinda dissed Vince McMahon, although not directly. This was an approved concept and Big Show just laid into it. You can't see that being something which would please the officials in the back. Number 4, the New Day didn't work at first. If you want to see just how much can change in WWE, go back and watch the New Day's first ever promo. It's upbeat, preachy and really obnoxious, and yet for some reason Vince McMahon thought this would transform all 3 wrestlers into the biggest baby faces possible in 2014. Doesn't make much sense. It didn't work either, as they were booed out of every building they entered as their New Day Rocks chant got switched up to New Day Sucks. In terms of a first impression and the intent, the trio hit a wall very early on. Realizing this was the case, however, Xavier, Kofi and Big E used it to their advantage, including Woods going to McMahon himself and saying that if he let them run with this heel idea, he promised he could even get Kingston booed. Despite some reservations, Xavier was true to his word, and the rest is history. What's not, or at least what's hidden beneath the surface, is that this was not the idea. The New Day were meant to be the guys we could all get behind and believe in, almost a new incarnation of Daniel Bryan. That happened to a certain extent down the line, but not before some excessive tweaking and some rethinking. Number 3, his Jamaican accent. Now, as weird as this sounds, I love Kofi's fake Jamaican accent, but only because when Triple H broke the 4th wall and revealed that it had just disappeared, it resulted in a genuinely funny Raw moment. Both the delivery and Kingston's shot looked were done to perfection. It's only right to say it was a strange decision because it meant someone within WWE had told Kofi to pretend he was from the Caribbean and never really gave him any other character development plans. He was just the happy Jamaican guy. Or at least he wasn't until 2009 when that was dropped cold, proving that all this stuff with Lana is nothing new. Aside from the Triple H reference, it was left to the commentators to talk about Kofi's Ghanaian heritage, but that he was actually from Boston. Imagine that happening in any other sport. You think all involved with nuts, and yet a decade ago most fans just shrugged their shoulders and thought, yeah, cool, why not? It was best this was left behind because it was always going to run its course. Plus it would have been really unfair to Kofi if he had to try and keep that up, both in and outside of the ring. What daft interviews they would have been. Number 2, Randy Orton's meltdown. Clearly something that Kofi and Orton himself don't mind referring to, as Kingston did just that on a recent episode of SmackDown. The blowout between them back in 2009 has become stuff of legend for fans ever since. A major reason for this is because everything that came prior. While we're all over the moon about Kingston's big push now, he was having the same kind of treatment back here. Just go and watch his boom drop through a table on the Viper at Madison Square Garden. It was like a new star had been born, until WWE just dropped it. The story goes that it was Orton himself who had a hand in this, as he was infuriated at Kofi for botching a finish during a triple threat match that also featured John Cena. The Wrestling Observer reported that Kingston was meant to stay down for Randy's punk kick, but instead got to his feet, leaving Orton to RKO him instead. Not the end of the world, you'd think, but Randy was living about it, screaming stupid before he made the cover to let both Kofi and the world know what he thought of this mishap. The fact Kingston's push hit a wall after this should make an eyebrow raise at the very least, but we'll always have this moment to treasure. It's genuinely hilarious, even more so if you don't know the context. Number 1, Chris Jericho's Vince McMahon story. This comes direct from one of Chris Jericho's books, so that alone should be enough to underline that it's more than likely true. It's also bonkers. But during a flight filled with wrestlers, Vince McMahon himself took a shot at Kofi by saying maybe one day he'd get over. While Kingston just lightly laughed this off, Y2J had a different idea. Kofi had to challenge his boss to a fight. In any other scenario, you'd say this was a giant joke, but Jericho was deadly serious. So that is what happened. Kofi approached McMahon, asked if he had a problem with him, before the two tussled on the floor with no proper shots being thrown. According to Jericho, Vince would have respected him more for doing this, and to his credit, McMahon did just forget about it afterwards. I don't think this is the kind of story that would appease stockholders' mind, hence why today WWE won't talk about it all that much. I'd also like to see what the fallout would have been if Brock Lesnar had asked Vince to do the same thing.